Alright, so when I do quadding, this is what I do. I make a copy of the mesh I want to work on. I click on it. I separate what I need to have. Normally I do it by material. Then I isolate it. Control I. Then Alt I. Oh, yeah. Control. There we go. Alt and I to isolate what I'm working on. Then let's say I click on this section. I can go ahead and select these polygons or these edges that I know I'm going to get rid of because you can tell from the way it's positioned that these are obviously supposed to be squares. So I can just highlight those two, then highlight those two, highlight the top by holding control, and highlight the bottom part. And I go over here to remove on edit edges, and it makes it into a quad. Which, I'll show you the difference right now. I'll do the same thing right here, but here's a fast way to do it. You can have the computer try to compute it for you. You would go to modeling, geometry, quadify all. I go to select edges from section because sometimes it'll break the UVs if I do it automatically. I check to make sure the correct edges are selected from what I had. I do remove. Another way to do it is to use the edges right here. I can clearly select these, this, and this. Notice how I got the backs as well. Do the same thing. Geometry, select edges from selection, switch back to edge selection, and it'll show me what's highlighted. I go ahead and I hit remove, and it's done. So I do that for the whole entire thing. Now, a quick tip for that is if you have less things to compute or grab like this, it won't even bother registering the top part. So it'll be less likely to have error. So now if I go to geometry and I go to select edges from selection, it's more likely to select the right ones. But sometimes it can get confused. And it will select like this section and this section. And that will obviously break your turbo smooth or your UVs. So let's take a look at how it looks like with the turbo smooth. Turbo smooth. Notice how ugly it is when it's not quadded. See how it's all broken up right there? But when you see that it is quadded, it's a lot cleaner. Like this section right here is a really good example. You can turn this on to see how it looks like before and after. So let's go ahead and get rid of that section right there. This section right here. This section right there. Over here, select edges, double check to make sure it's the correct one. And then I hit remove. Now let's just do that for these as well. Notice how I'm not selecting the vertical line so it won't confuse it with it. But there's still a high chance it could confuse it with the middle line right here, which you could manually deselect. But as you can imagine, with high poly models, it's going to take forever. So sometimes you're going to get 3D models such as pants where it doesn't have obvious lines of where you got to cut it from. But that's up to you to decide what you can and can't do. What I also like to do is, before I do Turbo Smooth, I like to put in unwrap. Doing an unwrap UVW shows me the highlighted lines where my UVs will break if I accidentally get rid of that. A good way to clean it up, because it's showing me the whole model, is just to grab this and hit select all. Hide all unselected. So, it shows me where the lines are now. And I can hit the arrow thing to show me which ones I have selected. So if I select this, then I select unwrap, it'll show me what I have selected. You want to make sure you don't get rid of any of the green lines. That will break your UVs. Mine looks pretty clean so far. So now I'll go back to editable poly and remove those. I'll do the same for these as well. Select from edges, double check it. Might get lost. Sometimes it's good to have a different color. Like see right here, this is where it might be better to do it manually. Or if you can, line it up so it only selects the important ones. So let's see. I got that selected. That's proper. That's proper. It's got no confusion. Can't see X-ray does help here though. Alright, and I hit remove. So, I have those done now. Do the same for this one. And then I hit remove. Now another tip here is to make sure you make the edges either sharp or not. You can, luckily, if you have it quadded and you double click this, it'll select all of the connected lines to it. As far as it's been quadded. If it's not been quadded, it will stop at the last one, like this one did. So, let's say I did half of it. like this. So I deselected those, and I went over here and put my crease to 1. I usually do 0.75, but in this case, I'll just do 1. Do the same thing for the bottom, deselect that, and then do the same thing, 1. Once I go back to Turbo Smooth, you're going to see a difference. Notice how sharp the edges are here, because I did it on 1, versus how the rounded the edges are over here. Both are quadded, but they're not both as sharp. Main difference right here. You can see where it drastically changes. So, you do that for the entirety of the 3D mesh, and you get a better looking result in DAZ. Not to mention, when you do a smooth modifier in DAZ, when it brings it above the skin, it will look a lot cleaner because it won't be using triangles but quads. Hopefully, this has been able to help you understand what I mostly do and why it takes so long. Because as you can imagine, if I go to unhide all, the pants, it starts losing that obvious pattern. And then we start getting to these folds right here where it becomes 5 stars. Those you can just do to your best intentions. I like to go with the edges, like if it looks practical. If it's supposed to be a sharp edge, I just make it stay a sharp edge, and I just let the quad try to figure it out later when I do Turbo Smooth. Hopefully that helps you understand.